if I get to the point where I've spent more time in Germany than I did in the US, I don't know how I'm going to feel about that.
There's this feeling in Berlin that I've tried to find in other cities around the world, and I can't find it. Nothing scratches that itch the way Berlin does.
That's a pretty big commitment to go to a country that you haven't been to before and then end up staying there for like over a decade.
I realized like, oh my God, it's been a third of my life has been in this country.
Wow.
There is definitely a loneliness in those first couple years until you slowly meet people.
Right. My English got worse. My German's not great yet, so I speak both languages pretty mediocre at this point. Our whole adult lives have been here. So when I do go back to the States, I forget what it's like to actually be there.
Well, hey, thanks for doing this, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like you guys got a cool story. A couple of Americans living in Germany. I'm excited to get into it. Now, your channel is called Americans in Germany Drinking Whiskey.
Correct.
So are you guys popping whiskey? I was just going to ask.
Always, man. We, anytime we do something, we have to somehow include the whiskey.
Right.
Well, it's on brand. It's a part of the job. You know what I mean? It would be irresponsible not to.
Right? It's a tough job, but
It's a tax deduction, all that whiskey bottles. Come on.
I just have coffee because it's 10 in the morning here in Canada, so not prime whiskey drinking time. But, what can you do? If you guys don't mind, I'd like to take it back to the beginning with you guys and kind of check out the origin story.
Sure.
Where are you guys from originally?
I'll go first.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm from Rhode Island.
And I'm from California.
Yeah.
California and Rhode Island, opposite sides of the country.
Totally.
Yeah, that's it.
And so you live in Germany now, but did you guys know each other before that? Or
No.
No, met a few years out. I mean, I don't know. I'd been living here maybe 7 years before I met him.
That's probably 5-6 years. Yeah, and I work with his wife for the past 8-9 years, and then so we met through when he met his now wife. I met him, and then we're out to at a beer garden one time, and we're just talking about Germany, and then my girlfriend and his wife were like, "You guys should make a podcast about this," and we're like, "Not a bad idea." Didn't really know each other that well either, but that we kind of our friendship blossomed through the podcast. Actually,
that's the interesting thing. We weren't like good friends who did a podcast. We became good friends because we had a podcast, and meeting every Wednesday for 3 years doing a podcast, and now YouTube. So
kind of the opposite. You went about it in the opposite way than most people do.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
So then, like, when it comes to moving from the U.S. to Germany, did you guys do that in a similar year, or like when did you first come to Germany?
I came 2013.
that in 2011.
Okay, so pretty close.
So I mean, roughly about
Mm-hmm. And what was the motivation for you guys to go to Germany to begin with?
Oof.
Go ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
So I had a friend from college who moved here, and I was a senior. She graduated. She lived in Berlin for, at that point, maybe like 8-9 months. And she just kind of hit me up one night. She came back from the club. It was like 5 a.m. here in Berlin, or 11 p.m. in Rhode Island. And she's like, "Yeah, I just got back from the club. Everyone's making fun of me because it's so early." I'm like, 5 a.m. Where are you again? She's like, "I'm in Berlin." I was like, "All right, like in Germany." She's like, "Yeah." And she's like, you should just move here." And I was like, "I've never been to Europe and never really traveled that much. I just graduated. I couldn't really find a job. So I was like, you know what? I got nothing else going on. I'll come move to Berlin indefinitely." And then, so I worked at like a pizza place, made some money, saved up, and then bought a one-way ticket. And 11 years later, still here.
Wow, that's like so random.
Yeah. It was completely just like a drunk conversation that just was a life. It just changed my whole life for the better. It was unbelievable. Yeah.
But you hadn't been to Europe before that.
No.
So you were just like, yeah, whatever, do it. Sure, why not?
I was 22 years old. I was like, there's nothing else going on right now. Why not? I got nothing else going on. So it could be a fun venture. In worst case, it's a 3-month vacation. My visa expires. I go back to the States and I'm back where I am. Best case, right, I find a job and get a visa. And that's what happened.
Wow. Okay. Super random, but I guess it worked out.
It did. It totally did. Yeah.
I mean, decade later, you're still here, right?
Yeah. 11 years.
Yeah. And how about you, Geoff?
When I graduated from high school, I did a few Euro trips, backpacking around for a few months with the Eurail passes, all that, and just kind of fell in love with Europe and Germany especially. But I never even thought, I never thought of it. Oh, you could move there. I just thought these are places you visited. I didn't think you could actually move there. So then a few years later, maybe around 2008, I decided, you know what, I want to go and just for fun learn German. So I was like, okay, I'll go do a class in Munich or Austria or wherever. And I found an apartment in Vienna. So I went there to do a 3-month German course and fell in love with it, overstayed my visa because I didn't want to go back. And then eventually I was like, okay, I got to go. Because once you do that, you're screwed because you can't get a job. You can't get a permanent residency, you know? So I was like, okay, I need to go back, reset everything, better prepare. So I went back to the States for about a year and a half, you know, worked, save up money, got the appropriate documents and everything, and then came back the right way in 2011. And just thought, yeah, same as him, kind of let's give it a try because I've always wanted to just live in Europe and at least for a year. 13 years later, now I'm married. I have a German wife and live here in Berlin full time. So,
and what was different about Germany for you, like versus the other European countries that you could have moved to, or other European languages that you could have learned?
Well, I think language-wise, when I was 8 years old, we randomly in my homeroom class, they taught us German for 2 weeks. I couldn't tell you why because they never taught us another language.
Just 2 weeks?
Yeah, it was like a little special thing. They weren't actually trying to like, you know, teach us German, become fluent. It was kind of like, because we're eight, it was more of like a fun little thing. And of course, you know, you learned like to count to 10 and maybe say like hi and I'm a student or whatever, you know, basic stuff. But I think so that for me, kind of the foreign language was Germany, and I kind of enjoyed it, like just those few words I knew, and I think that was the seed that eventually led to me later in life.
Nobody enjoys German.
I don't know. I prefer it over French.
No, I do like it.
Yeah.
It's cool.
So that I fell in love with German just because of that. I think that was like the genesis of it. And Germany, I don't know, like, you know, I grew up watching a lot of like Rick Steves documentaries about Europe, and just something about Germany and the Alps and the nature and the people, just like anytime I saw an episode about Germany, for some reason, it clicked with me. But originally when I moved to Europe, I moved to Vienna because in my head, I was like, oh, I'll move to Munich. But I didn't know that Munich, you know, is insanely expensive. And in fact, nowadays, I would never want to move to Munich. I prefer Berlin much more.
Yeah.
But in my head, you know, from my limited experience, like Munich, and you just think of Munich and Lederhosen and all these like stereotypes that aren't true about Germany.
Munich is like the German stereotype, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So, but yeah, so it was just kind of those kernels, and then it just went from there.
Do either of you guys have any like German heritage?
No. I mean, maybe on my dad's side, but probably more like Eastern. We're not really sure, but some Ashkenazi Jews were somewhere in Europe. I'm not really sure where. So.
Yeah, my dad's side was Norwegian, and my mom's side is El Salvadorian. So yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, so definitely not. No German.
No German.
You guys live in Berlin. Is that the city you're in?
Yes.
Yeah.
And have you spent the entire time in that city then mostly?
Yeah.
I lived in Munich for 9 months for work. But yeah, the rest of the time, Berlin.
And what do you like about Berlin? Is it a good spot to be?
Oof. Could talk about Berlin all day. I mean, we started a whole podcast and YouTube channel about Berlin. It's just like there's this feeling in Berlin that I've tried to find in other cities around the world, and I just can't find it. Nothing scratches that itch the way Berlin does. It's a very open city. It's a very free city. You can be whoever you want to be.
Right.
No one judges you.
Lack of judgment. Yeah. I think in places like Munich and other kind of German cities, you're kind of expected to dress a certain way and be a certain way. But in Berlin, you can be whoever you want to be, do whatever you want to do at any time you want to do it, and nobody bats an eye. I mean, we've seen some weird shit in Berlin, but after a few years, it just becomes like very normal standard. And I think also it's a good place to start out because there is a huge expat scene here. I think something like a fourth of Berliners are non-German.
Right. I mean, it's super international. I think there's like people from 160 so many different countries here, which just makes it interesting too. You know, you get to meet people from all over the world, but everyone kind of has that shared love for the city and those shared values, whatever that might be to you, because, you know, it's different for everyone, I guess, in the city. There's just a lot of things to do, and it's in the center of Europe, so it's easy to travel around all around Europe, which is super nice. It's less expensive than other capital cities, especially big cities.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
getting more expensive, obviously, now, like everywhere else is, but still way further behind, Munich or Paris or New
or
York
London,
or
yeah.
all these big places.
It's always been very affordable. Even now, though the prices have gone higher, it's still affordable compared to other places
Right.
you could end up. Yeah.
Right.
I've been to Germany one time. I did an exchange through my university, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. I don't know. It was a while ago. And I was in Berlin, but only for like one weekend. And so it was very, very limited. Like it was like 3 days or something. But I spent most of the time in Oldenburg, like near Bremen in the north. And so I was there for a month, I guess maybe 5 weeks. I was doing a German language program. And
Cool.
then after the
Nice.
program ended, I hung out with one of my German friends for another week with his family in Gelsenkirchen, of all places. So
Never been.
No idea.
yeah, it's like a city in Western Germany. It's like it was Gelsenkirchen and Bochum were the two places
Bochum,
that
yeah.
we
Oh,
were
okay,
at.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that kind of that area. I think Gelsenkirchen is like an hour from Bochum or something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, I have very limited experience with Berlin other than that one weekend, and we spent so much time just like going to museums because they have like the museum island in Berlin, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time doing that, which was kind of an experience in and of itself. But yeah, Berlin is a city that I'd like to go back to and like get into more because I think there is a lot there that I obviously didn't have time to see. So
Yeah, and I think as a tourist, it's kind of hard to visit on a short time basis because
Totally.
I mean, a lot of European capitals, they really have a true city center where the old town and everything you kind of want to visit, but Berlin doesn't have a city center. It's very spread out. So if you just go to kind of that area around Museum Insel, the Museum Island and that kind of thing, you're seeing 1% of Berlin. You know what I mean? Like, so it is kind of, I think, hard to get around.
You can't do Berlin for a weekend because Berlin is made up of a bunch of, it used to be small little villages that became towns, became cities, and became one big city. So every like borough has its own city center and its own vibe and its own feel, kind of like New York, but I would say even more different. I would say,
Yeah. And not just 5 boroughs. It's like,
right. There's a buttload of boroughs.
Yeah.
And then within those boroughs, there's other like little mini boroughs as well. And within that, there's other little, it's called Kietzes, like neighborhoods. So it's all very different. And like Geoff said, there's no center. So it is, if you do come for a week and don't really know what to do or where to go, you might have a bad experience here because the main center that everyone goes to is super boring and not fun at all.
and no Berliner actually lives there. You know what I
No
mean?
one goes
Yeah.
there. Yeah, exactly.
I remember just walking a lot, like because
Yeah.
we didn't have a car, so obviously, so we were just like walking around. Like we wanted to go see the like that golden angel.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
can't remember what-
Yeah, the victory column. Yeah.
The Siegersäule.
Yeah. And we were on our way back from that, and that took like 45 minutes or something to walk to where we needed to go because it's like in the middle of a highway, basically, right?
Right. Yeah. Right
Like,
near
it's
Brennero
kind of-
Tower, yeah.
It's kind of like nowhere. And so we were walking back from that, and I think we were trying to get to like a restaurant or a cafe or something, and they put me in charge of navigation, which is a mistake to begin with. But it's like in a foreign city. I don't know where I'm at. And so I had the Google map on my phone, and I was like, okay, left here, right here. And I realized partway through, we were walking like maybe another 25, 30 minutes, that we were going completely the wrong direction. Like it was backwards. Like it was like a reverse on my Google map. And I was like, oh, guys, I'm sorry, man. Like that's my bad. And you could tell that like everyone else was pissed at me because they were just quiet. They were like, and I was like, oh, just say something, please. Like, and so I remember being like on foot a lot in Berlin, walking from this place to another place, and like the museum island, doing that, walking from one place to another. And so I guess definitely got my steps in, I'd say.
Totally. And that's actually one of the things I like about the city too. It's super walkable, the big sidewalks. And also it has like some of the best public transportation in the whole world.
Yeah.
So getting around is super easy.
Amazing U-Bahn,
not tomorrow because
S-Bahn,
you're on
yeah.
strike, but generally it's really amazing.
Normally. So how long have you guys been in Germany? Geoff, you said 13 years, was it?
13, yeah. Or, nope. It's 2025. 14 years now. Okay.
14 years. Wow.
As of
and
May,
Alex?
yeah.
11.
11. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a long time. I mean,
Yeah,
14 years in Germany. Are you getting close to the point where you've spent almost of this, like what percentage of your life have you spent in Germany versus the US?
I was thinking about that the other day. If I get to the point where I've spent more time in Germany than I did in the US. I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. That's going to be weird. But no, because I moved to Europe, I think when I was in my early 20s. So I was like 21 or 22. So I'm not quite there yet. But yeah, not long from now, that'll be a weird moment.
I mean, on my 32nd birthday, I'm 34 now. I realized like, oh my God, it's been a third of my life has been in this country.
Wow.
And like all of my adult life. So it's a bizarre feeling, because it's also like, we started talking about this before, like what's even like a cultural identity at this point, you know, like what are we? And that's also a weird thing to think about, whether it even matters as well. I don't know, but it's an odd thing to think about.
And when you guys first moved to Germany, did you like just stay there, like just straight from the first trip, or was there some back and forth between Germany and the US?
Well, for me, because so in that when I moved to Vienna and I overstayed my visa, I was actually there, like I said, for a few months, and then I met a guy at a party who told, because Vienna's great, but Austria as a whole is very small and has a very small, very little opportunities for foreigners getting work. But I met a guy at a party who's like, hey, go to Berlin. You know, like they're giving foreigners jobs left and right, whatever. So I actually moved to Berlin for 3 months before I finally like just kind of realized, okay, man, like you're never going to be able to stay here full time with overstaying your visa. So you have to go back. So I left like my bags and my stuff there for a year, like I said, and I went, and then I came back a year later. Yeah. But since 2011, I've gone back once a year for Christmas, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just moved. Never left.
Didn't go back. But you go back to the States for like holidays and stuff like that? Or are you like just always in Germany?
Yeah, no, I try to go back. I try to go back at least once a year. It doesn't always work out. I still have like a pretty good friend group back in the States. So like when they have weddings, things like that, I go back, and then maybe for the holidays. But, you know, I've had my partner, I met her my first day here. So we've been together for 11 years. And so I see her family as well. So I try to do at least once a year if I can, but sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's tough.
That's a pretty big commitment to go to a country that you haven't been to before and then end up staying there for like over a decade. Was that like an intimidating thing, or did you not expect that you were going to stay that long?
I say it wasn't intimidating just because I had never. It was literally a year by year. There was no thought process of, oh, I'm going to stay here 10 years or I'm going to stay here 2 years. It was just kind of like, you know, you're here and it's like, okay, things aren't really working out, but like, ooh, I know I got a job. Okay, great. And then that works out for a couple of years, you know, and then like, that's also great. Ooh, but I got a better job. And then like, ooh, no. And then right before I met my wife, I was actually having the thought of moving back to the US. I was kind of getting disenfranchised with Germany, but then I met my wife, and then, you know, because I think the family thing is the hardest part, because, you know, not only are you getting older, but your parents are getting older.
You notice it more because you don't see them as often.
Yeah.
So like once a year, you see a 1 year difference. You're like, oh my God, you look different.
Yeah. So like, so I really want, it's not that I only wanted to visit once a year. It's just, you know, depending on the year, you know, it's $800,000 flight, you know, and I'm from California. So you're talking about 15 hours, you know, flying total. So it's a lot, but you know, I really want to, I'm always encouraging them to come visit me so I can see them more, you know, so.
Yeah, true. It's an interesting question though, because I don't know, the intimidating is an interesting way to put it. Cause I don't know. I mean, obviously it's very intimidating. You don't speak the language, you don't know the culture, really know anything. But I don't know. I think cause I was so young, it was just kind of like, just go with the flow and just kind of see what happens. And also I'm an educator. I'm an early childhood educator. So I work with children ages 1 to 6. And also the system here, I much prefer than the States. So it's also a nice reason for me to, when I first got my job, to stay, I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually do what I studied in the proper way I'd like to do it. So it's also a big driving factor as well, because I couldn't do, the education system in the States doesn't allow to teach the way that we do here. So I think it's also a pretty big factor too.
Oh yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and I think also I think the bureaucracy in Germany is very intimidating. Like the amount of red tape and paperwork you have to do to do
so
freaking anything is and it's not something that gets easier, or you get after 14 years.
No.
I still come across shit that I'm like, what? I have never heard of that, and I've been here 14 years. Like what is this new document you got to fill out just to do the most basic thing? So like that kind of stuff's intimidating. And also I think just living abroad in general, there is like a layer of, you never feel 100% like at home, you always feel like 99%, but there's always that one sliver of, because you know, if they wanted to, they could boot you out for whatever, because you know you have really no rights. You're just you know, you have a permanent residency, but you know it's like you're on much more thin ice than a German is. So you always, maybe it's more just in your head, but you're always worried about, God, if I do something wrong, like then they'll kick me out of here, or you know what I mean, like, because it's like everything feels kind of like on a tightrope, but it's not like always in your mind, but just once in a while, you know, it'll pop in and you're like,
until I get that sweet citizenship eventually.
And like, was there any culture shock for you guys when you first got to Germany? Like, what was that first kind of integration process like?
Yeah, totally. I think the biggest thing, because obviously they're both Western countries, you know, they're not super different, but I think people and how like interactions are very different.
Yeah.
And I think that took me a while. Or like, I think the go-to that everyone always says is like going to the grocery store is like a totally different experience. Like how you have to bag your own groceries and no one's like friendly the way Americans are. Like this,
there's no small talk.
No small talk.
Yeah, and
how you doing?
And you said bag your own groceries, but literally you have to do it at 1,000,000 miles per hour. Like if you're not throwing them into your bag, everyone in line is looking at you with like a death stare. You know, like whereas in the U.S. you slowly take your time, and usually there's a guy and
a bagger for you.
Yeah,
you know?
The cashier's usually like, you know, shooting the shit with you about whatever.
Or, you know, you're in line with someone, like he has Oreos and I have Oreos. And we're like, oh, we have Oreos. What are you doing tonight? We need my Oreos. Me too.
Classic
We're in Germany.
Oreo
I was telling my partner's uncle about that. And he's like, why would I talk to someone about what I got? They're hungry. I'm hungry. We're getting food. Like, why is this a conversation? And like, that's like the mindset it's like the German mindset.
Right.
It's like, why would I talk to you about something as mundane as Oreos?
Yeah. So meeting people is hard. And of course, when you move abroad, all you want to do is meet people because you know nobody. So there is definitely a loneliness in those first couple of years until you slowly meet people.
Right. Like you go to a bar in the States and you can make a friend very, very quickly.
Right.
Whether it's only for that evening, but at least you'll meet someone to talk to for an hour or so. Where like my first week here, I went to like 4 or 5 bars myself just trying to meet people. I didn't talk to a single person the whole night, and I tried. It's just different.
It's a tough place to be as like someone who doesn't know anybody, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because I think Germany might be a hard place to kind of get your foot in the door socially.
Yes.
I mean, I was only there for a month, and so it's kind of an extreme case, but I definitely felt that when I arrived. Like, I got the vibe from people that like nobody cared about me. Like, they're like, you do you, I'm doing me, and if you have issues, I mean, hey, that's too bad, man. Like, I was trying to get a SIM card when I was in Germany, and it was like a physical SIM card. It wasn't like a digital one, like an eSIM or whatever.
Right.
And it probably took me like 2 weeks to get the SIM card, and I was only there for a month. But I was like so desperate to get this SIM card, and I went to like an Aldi's and I bought it, and I had so many issues trying to connect it. Like, you have to verify your identity, but they were asking for like a German passport to do that. And
oh God, yeah.
I was like, well, I obviously don't have a German passport, so you know, how can I get this done? And so I went back to the Aldi, and I was like, is it Aldi's with an S or is it Aldi?
Just Aldi.
Aldi, yeah.
Aldi. And so I went back to the store, and I was like, hey, man, I was talking to a Mr. Vogel, Herr Vogel. And I said, hey, Mr. Vogel, I'm trying to get this SIM card, and I can't get it to work. Can you help me? And he was like, okay, what's going on? And I was like, well, I can't, confirm my identity and blah, blah. And he's like, well, do you have a German passport? And I was like, obviously, I do not have a German passport.
Do you hear my language?
Yeah. Listen to me talk. I mean, this is why I have this issue. If I had a German passport, I'd already have a SIM card, wouldn't I?
I wouldn't need to talk to you.
And he was like, well, I don't know, man. That's tough. And you know what? It's 10:15 and my break starts. So see you later. And he just walked away.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, like, I'm on my own. Like, I have to figure this out on my own. And it was kind of like a rude awakening for me. And I don't think that like German people are rude, but I just think that they're like very independent. And like, you know, if you have an issue, it's kind of your responsibility to fix it. I mean, like, fair enough, I guess.
No, totally. I don't like the stereotype of people saying that Germans are unfriendly or rude.
But I can see why they say that.
I get it. I understand the stereotype completely. But I find Germans are very, very sweet, open people. But you have to like, they have a shell, you know, and like once that shell is cracked and like you're in, then you are a friend for life, and they'll drop anything and everything to help you with anything you need.
Right. But few
it's
people
not
stick
superficial
around
friendships. People
to
are
get through
very
that shell.
Right. It takes a while to break through that shell because they want to make sure they can trust you, and I guess vice versa. Where I feel like I've met more American people where you're best friends, and then like after a week or two, you realize that they're not. Where Germans is the opposite. It takes like 2 weeks to actually break that shell. And then once you're in, you're like family, like really. Yeah, I think Germans are lovely. It's just,
they could be more helpful. Like
customer service is trash. That's for sure.
Yeah, customer service in Germany is awful, especially
Awful.
coming from the US where customer service is amazing.
Right.
But yeah, I have a good story that's very similar to yours where when I first moved to Germany, so like I've been in Germany for a few weeks and I'm going to the immigration office because I want to get a visa to learn German. Like, I don't know German, so I'm here to learn German. So I go to the visa office, which back then they weren't allowed to speak English with you.
Right.
So I haven't learned German yet. So I have no idea what they're saying. So she's just literally repeating the question over and over. And I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. And she got frustrated with me and she was about to deny my visa when one of her like coworkers walked in to grab like his water bottle or whatever. And then I again, back then I didn't know what he said because he was speaking German, but just from the pointing and whatever and the look on his face, I could tell he was just like, just give it to him kind of a thing. And then she was like, okay, fine, and stamped it. And then I was like, but why is it my problem? I don't know German. I'm literally here so it's, to me, that was like day one showing kind of how backwards the customer service here is where, they're basically like, it's all on you, but like it shouldn't be in certain situations. You know what I mean? Like, how am I supposed
Everyone
to
needs
figure
help
this out?
every once in a while,
Right? Exactly.
A little hand holding doesn't hurt.
Well, like that North American customer service is so like people will never say no, right? Like they'll be like, oh, I don't know, maybe, or let me take a look for you, or good question, let me figure that out. And in Germany, they're just like, I don't know, man. What do you want me to do about it? I remember I was also trying to rent a bicycle because that's like in Oldenburg, that was like a huge thing. Everyone was riding bikes, right? And so they said there was like 100,000 bikes or something in Oldenburg. And you go to the university and everyone has their bikes lined up. They're everywhere. And so I needed to get one of those right away to get around. And so I went to this little bike shop and there was like a group of like maybe 5 of us. And I was kind of the only one that had like a decent enough amount of German to talk to the guy. So I was like, hey man, we want to rent a bicycle. Like, what do we have to do? And he's like, we don't have any bikes. And I was like, oh, I mean, this is a bike shop, right? So like, maybe you have some later, like there'll be some more coming in. He's like, maybe. I'm like, could you tell me potentially when you might have some more bikes that would be available for us to rent? And he's like, don't know. And I was like, so you see the situation I'm in, right? You see how all of us need to rent bikes, and this is a bike shop, right? And how we need that. So could you give us some information? And he was like, I think there's a bike shop downtown. Go check it out. And I was like, okay, sweet. Thanks, man. And then he just turned away and just like walked away. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, I thought this was a bike shop. I thought you'd be like begging me to rent a bike. I thought you'd want to take my money,
It happens to us all the time where literally in my head, I'm like, don't you want my money? Like, isn't this whole thing called a business? And the whole point is to be nice to the customers so you make money. But sometimes I feel like they don't give a crap about making money. I don't know why.
Go to our competitor on the street. I really don't care. Someone else will come tomorrow. It doesn't matter to me.
Which is
it's
insane.
not worth the hassle. It's not worth the hassle.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Yeah, it's wild.
So you said that like once you break through the shell, then you have like a more authentic or genuine friendship kind of that is hiding beneath the surface. So like if you're not meeting people at a bar, you're not talking to someone in line about Oreos, how did you end up meeting like your first friends?
A lot of my first friends were also other people who moved from different countries. So I met people, in German class.
Yeah.
At work, I think like kind of anywhere else, you meet people at work and you become friends with friendly people at work. Then you kind of meet people from them. And of course, like my friends I had my first year are different than I have now because people moved away or, you kind of latch on to anyone that you can when you're new to a place. Not saying those relationships weren't special and great, but, things move on, life happens, people grow up, people move away, whatever. So I think it's kind of like just anywhere else in the world. I mean, you can meet people at bars as possible.
It depends on where you are.
I think it depends where you are, who you are, how much you want to put yourself out there. And then learning German opens up a whole array of possibilities. If you can only speak English, Berlin's easy in English. It's fine.
You could live your whole life and never know a word of German. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could do it and you would be fine.
But if you want to be really integrated, like understand the city, understand the culture, and actually meet people, then learning German is super helpful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, my first few years, I used Facebook groups a lot. You know, there's like
Oh, yeah,
a
meetup
Facebook
groups.
group for Berlin or whatever, and I would just, I had nothing to do that weekend, so I just post and I'd be like, hey, anybody want to go play ping pong? It's like sunny outside, and a few people would respond, and I'd just slowly meet people with kind of meetup groups like that. Yeah, especially in Berlin, there's a lot of meetup groups that.
And there's also like a bunch of like like clubs, like they call it Verein. It's like a bunch of clubs. And like for any niche interest you have, I guarantee you there's some kind of club in Berlin for it.
Right. But if you don't know German, going to a Verein won't help you though, because
Well, it depends, It depends on which one.
right.
Some, are multinational. Plus, lots of Germans speak English anyway, so you can always figure it
That
out.
doesn't mean they want to.
Doesn't mean they want to,
Yeah.
but they will.
Yeah,
And they'll say it's terrible, even though it's better than my English,
Yeah.
which is extremely frustrating.
And how is your guys' German now after all these years?
Pretty good. I'd say I'm decently fluent. There are always like some vocabulary words I forget or don't know, but I can go anywhere and talk to people and understand like 90% of what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it depends on situations. Like, because I think during the week, I'd say like 75% of probably you as well. Like, what I speak is English because I speak English with my wife, and we have like our friend group with people that are, American, but also German, and like kind of
British
English is a
and
median language, But yeah, but when I visit, my wife's family or whatever, then it's just German for 3 days or
I
however
speak
long.
mostly German at work now because my colleague speaks German.
But I thought you're supposed to be teaching English.
Right. So my kids, I speak English. My colleague, I speak German. So it's kind of all over the place. And sometimes my head gets really, my wires get crossed and I forget like the English word or, it gets all messed up. Or I speak like in German syntax and English and it gets really annoying sometimes.
I think we're always speaking some version of Danglish, like
See, my English got worse. My German's not great yet. So I speak both languages pretty mediocre at this point.
Yeah, it's like, what do they call that when you learn a new language but you forget your like native language? It's like bilingual.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you speak with your partner, Alex? Do you speak
I
English?
also speak mostly English. Yeah, we speak German sometimes and mostly English because I think whatever language you meet someone in is kind of language you stick to.
Mm-hmm.
So like my friends that I met, my German friends in English, I could speak with them in German now. Sometimes I do a little bit, but it just feels weird because I know them in English.
Yeah.
And then when I make new friends in German, it's only German, even though they can't speak English, but I met them in German. So we just speak German,
because your personality is different in a
Right.
different language, and the person just doesn't sound like the person. You know what I mean? Like their tone's slightly different. Yeah, and in German, I'm a very boring person because like I can speak it, but like I don't have the extreme nuances. Yeah, I can't do jokes as quickly as I can in English. So it's a lot of like the moment comes, and then it's like 30 seconds later, I finally got the joke I want to say, but it's so beyond.
Conversation's over.
It's like so beyond.
Or
It's
like,
damn it.
you'll say it like quietly because you're not sure if it's correct. And no one hears you, but then one person heard you, and they laugh like, "Oh, I should have said it louder, and it would have been great." I nailed that
I would
joke.
have killed. I would have
killed it.
Yeah, German's kind of notorious for being a difficult language to learn as well. They have these grammatical cases that add a bunch of endings and declinations,
Yeah.
to adjectives and all kinds of stuff. Was it difficult for you guys to learn German?
Yeah.
It sucked.
That der die das. Like eventually, at some point, I just learned it's better just to not give a crap about the der die das, because as long as because when you care, then you start speaking a lot less because you're really focused on remembering, okay, is that word der, this, das, that. But if you just use one randomly, a German will still know what you mean because
Exactly.
you know what I mean. So it's better to get yourself speaking and then kind of slowly kind of get that grammar stuff locked in later on, if that makes sense.
Like that grammar kind of came after speaking it for a while, and you hear it more often. You kind of like, that doesn't sound right. That should maybe be das. I don't know why, but it just should be because I've been surrounded by language so much at that point. You just kind of get it.
Yeah. What I like in German though is it does have a lot of rules, but it has very specific rules on pronunciation. So you could see any random German word that you've never seen before in your life, and you could pronounce it correctly because like English pronunciation makes no sense with English. You have so many words that don't make any sense pronunciation wise, or you have two words spelled completely different and they sound exactly the same. German, it's very regimented on how things are pronounced for like 99% of words. So in that sense, I like it. And also a lot of these bigger German words that look insane
compound
to
words.
people are, it's like a 40-letter word, and you're like, oh my God. But if you know a little bit of German, you just look at it, it's literally just 5 tiny words put together. And not knowing that word, you can take those 5 words and in your head, like figure out what that long word probably means, So
it's also really fun. It's like a little puzzle in your head when you get it. It's very, very satisfying,
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of pieces to put together in that puzzle, I feel like.
Yeah.
I learned German for a while on my own, and then I took it in university. I took maybe like 5 or 6 classes, and then after that, I did that exchange, or it was more like a study abroad program, really, in the north there. So then it was all German. It was like 9 to 2 every day. We just did like German classes, and we had a meeting every week with like other students where we'd hang out and stuff. And so I felt like I learned a lot. And then I went back to Canada and then did more German classes at the university. So that was kind of a nice little like German sandwich where I had some instruction here, some instruction here, and then kind of an immersion experience in Germany.
Were you like thinking of maybe moving there someday, or are you just kind of like we're having fun with German?
I was just kind of having fun with it, to be honest. Like I like languages, and all my family is all like German, like cool. They all have German heritage. Like no one in my family was born in Germany, but I mean, my last name is Hartmann, right? Like, which I only pronounce it that way if I'm trying to make a point, but it's like, very much German on both sides, my dad's side and my mom's side. I think on my mom's side was the closest to Europe. So like my grandpa on my mom's side he was the first one in his family to be born in Canada. Other than that, it was all like European born. I think they were actually Russians, but like they lived in a German speaking community.
Sure.
And so I was kind of trying to connect, I guess, to my heritage. No one in my family speaks German anymore, so I wanted to kind of rekindle that culture, I guess, for myself at least.
Cool.
And then I ended up going to Germany, and it worked out really well. But the last couple of years, like I don't have anyone to speak German with, and so my German is like gotten really crappy now, and now it's harder for me to speak it because I've forgotten like so many words and stuff like that. But it's a challenging language. I think one of the things that makes it a little bit easier in comparison to like, let's say, Romance languages or something like that is that there's less verb conjugation. Like, if you learn like Spanish or French or Italian, there's like the conjugation tables are like huge for all of the different verbs. But with German, like I think there's even less verb tenses than in English. Like if you say ich gehe, that can mean I go, but it can also mean I am going.
Right, true. Right.
Like also present tense, yeah.
So you're already eliminating one tense, where if you learn Spanish, you have to add tenses that don't even exist in English, right? Like the subjunctive and things like that. So that is kind of a saving grace a little bit, in the face of like a bunch of other complicated grammar rules.
Right, because then they add, once you kind of get like, all right, der, die, das, I get that. Then like, wait, now it's going to change to dem, der, dem. And then that's going to change to den, die, de, and then dead, and there's all these other things like, you just told me there's only 3. Now those 3 became 9, and that's not fair.
Yeah, for an English speaker, at first it's a lot where you're like, what is all this extra
all
work
for the
I have to do now? Yeah. Basically,
yeah. And then also the word order, like learning a language that has a different word order, I don't think is like overly complicated. What makes it complicated in German is that the word order is always changing. Because there's like those like trigger words, right? Like where if you say because, then suddenly the verb has to go at the end as opposed to in like the position it would be in like an English sentence. So then you have like these weird sentences where it's like, because I at 2:00 with my friends on Thursday to the store went.
Right. And it's actually like
all the way at the end.
We've talked about this before with that because I find like a lot of Germans are really good listeners, and they don't interrupt each other a lot. And I was thinking about that, and I was talking to my partner about it, and I told her, I said, I think it's because a lot of times the verb comes at the end of a sentence, so you don't know what someone's saying until you hear the end of the sentence, so you really can't interrupt because you're like, because I blah blah blah. You're like, what happened? What's the verb? Did you drink it? Did you eat it? Did you run to it? Like, what happened? So you kind of need that last verb to understand the whole context of the story.
Yeah, or even numbers. I found in my first German classes, like so back in school, if your teacher was like, okay, turn to page 34, the second she's saying 30, you're already on your way before she says 4. But in German, she says, turn to page 4.
30s.
and 30. You know what I mean? So like you literally have to wait until she says the entire. I remember I started noticing that like the first few weeks, and I was like, oh man,
It sounds
like,
bad as French. I think French they do math to say numbers.
Yeah.
Oh
Sounds
yeah, it's
awful.
like 4 20s plus 6 or something.
Right.
Like they like add like it's a whole like calculation basically.
It's insane. Come on.
So would you say like the der, die, das is the hardest part of learning German? Like the grammatical cases, that is?
I mean, it's hard to
It's
get
all
them
hard.
all right, but I won't say it's the hardest because, like Geoff said, it doesn't really 100% matter because people will understand you if you get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think the hardest part is the structure and just, for me, it's just vocabulary, just getting more words down.
Yeah, that's true. And like also
That's every language, right?
pronunciation, because there's a lot of sounds like people, like especially Americans, are like afraid to make these like back of the throat kind of like sounds that people are afraid to use.
Well, see, I'm good with that because I went to Hebrew school 3 times a week
Nice.
when I was a kid. So, and Hebrew is very, has those sounds. So for me, it was pretty okay.
Yeah.
And like my grandma spoke a little bit of Yiddish to me. So I knew some words I kind of already heard, growing up a little bit. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. But yeah, doing like a proper German accent, I think, is also hard. Like, I think no matter how good my German gets, people are still going to immediately know I'm from California and I'm
See,
you know
like,
what I mean?
people don't know that I'm American, but they know I'm not German,
Okay.
which I'm happy about.
Yeah.
I always ask, like, maybe you're Italian, maybe this, but you're not German, but I don't hear American. So I'm happy
Nice.
that I don't sound American at least. That's for me a big win.
Does it get heavy for you guys after a while, feeling like people know that you're not from there? Do you feel like you are like other or different than the people that you're around?
Not in Berlin as much. In Berlin, because it's so international, I feel pretty fine. But when I go to like smaller towns or smaller villages, then 100%. Like
You're the weirdo.
You're the weirdo. Like or exotic. Either way. Like my partner grew up in a like 600 person village. So when I go to the village, like that town, like I'm an exotic American Jewish guy. So it's like very exotic, So sometimes I'm like the life of the party, or sometimes if you're like in town, you kind of feel super uncomfortable depending on where you are.
Right. Especially if, you're with your partner and you say like a few words in English or whatever. And in a small village like this, like it literally,
Deutsch, bitte.
it's like the German can hear that from a kilometer away. Like it stands out so much and everyone turns is like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like, are you lost? What's going? The first time I went to my girlfriend's house, we were there for maybe like 2 hours, and then her and like they live on farms, so her nearest neighbor isn't like right next door. 2 hours into it, her neighbor came, knocked on the door, and really was asking my wife's mom, like, hey, like who's the new guy? Like I heard some English, because I guess me and my wife had like gone for like a little walk and walked by her house, maybe said a few words, but just from that, like she was like investigating like what was happening, why was I there? It was
You
so
are a loud
bizarre.
American though. You are pretty loud. As a stereotype, the whole
Yeah,
true.
no, but in a dorm, I really try to like not stand out and to be quiet and to use as few English words as I can, because I don't want people looking at me weird or standing out.
Because like you don't necessarily have to be treated like poorly to feel like you're different than everybody else.
Right.
Like the experience that I had, like where I've spent the most time outside of Canada is in Colombia. That's where my girlfriend is from. And so I spent 9 months there. And people treated me really well. Like I was, accepted by them, but they always knew that I wasn't from there, right?
That's true.
And like it's a little bit even more obvious in Colombia because of the way that I look, right? They don't have to hear me speak to know that I'm not from there. They can just look at me, like clock me from across the room and be like, yeah, that's a gringo. And so I did feel like after 9 months, it weighed on me a little bit that I was always different. And like my girlfriend and I would go to the grocery store or something like that. And we would scan our items, and I would be right across from the cashier with my wallet in hand. They would look at me, and then they would look at my girlfriend and tell her what the price was.
Right.
Like, like not wanting to talk to me because they were, and at first I was kind of like offended by that. I was like, why are you like just avoiding me because I'm from a different country? Like, and then I talked to my girlfriend about it, and she was like, no, like, it's just that they're scared that you don't speak Spanish. And so then they're going to have an uncomfortable interaction. Like it's more about them feeling insecure about their English than like judging you from being from another place. And so like there was no like malice there, but it still makes you feel kind of like,
Totally.
oh, you're
100%,
different, And so I feel like that does get heavy after a while, or it can anyway.
Yeah, 100%. It definitely can. But like I said, in Berlin, 'cause it's a city full of immigrants, and
But it still happens, because I've had it I have it so many times. I'm sure you have too, where I'm doing I'm at a theater or grocery store where I'm interacting with somebody, and I'm speaking German, and they're responding in English the entire
Yes.
conversation, and
That's so annoying.
And I'm sticking to German because I'm trying to say like, no, I know German. You're obviously
I'm trying to assimilate to your culture.
and they think
let me.
Let me, please. And they're trying to be nice because like they want, like, a lot of Germans want to practice their English too.
But like you said, it's not
Like, it's
nice.
not helping
it
me.
makes you feel bad because it makes you feel like, oh, is my German so crap that you have to switch to English? And like you said, it's just making that reminder. Oh yeah, you're different. You're not. You know what I mean? Where I was like, no, just treat me like everyone else because it feels icky. And I was once with a friend of mine who's from Israel, and he's also expat. And we were at like a theater, and same thing. It happened to him. He's trying to buy tickets, and he got so mad in the middle of it in German. He's like, why are you talking to me in English? Do you not understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? Like I said that in German, and she was like, oh, sorry. Like because it happened to him so many times. He was just like, no, speak to me in German. There's no reason why you speak to me. But they think they're helping, but they're making you feel weird.
They're kind of singling you out a little bit from the group.
Yeah, there's no ill intent there, I don't think. But
no, they're trying to be helpful, I'm sure, right?
Right.
I made a rule for myself when I went to Germany for that month that I was only going to speak German with German people. Like I was in an exchange program, so like all of my classmates were like English speakers from like England and the US and Canada, and so obviously I was going to speak English with them, but anyone who was like a German speaker, I was only going to speak German. And I ran into some people like that as well. Like there was a guy that lived in our apartment building, and he would only speak to me in English, like for the whole month, basically just only English. And I was like, you know what? I am here to learn German, and I'm going to practice German, damn it. So all I did was speak German, and all he did was speak English. So we just had this backwards conversation for like a month. But I was like, you know what? I mean, you can't control what other people do, right? You can't tell them what language to speak or not to speak. You can only control what you speak. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to practice my speaking. Maybe not my listening comprehension, but I'm going to practice my speaking.
100%. I mean, I've also had situations where I met someone and we met each other in German, and then I found out like months later they spoke English too. And I was like, what? This whole time? So, but why am I getting mad again? So I'm getting mad either way. So I guess I'm just being unfair to everybody. I don't know.
Right. And also,
It's like a lose-lose.
Early days, you can also be judged pretty harshly as well. Because like I said, you can live in Berlin and never speak English if you want. But I found that the longer that you're in Berlin, and say you're at a party and it's like a German's hosting, it's mostly Germans, right? And this happened to me a lot where you'd meet the person and they'd be like, oh, how long are you in Berlin for? And if it's say a month or two, then they're like, okay, it's okay, still speak English. But if it's like, now you've been there 6 months, suddenly you get this judgy look and they're like, really? And you're not speaking German? Yeah, and especially if you answer years, you get really judgmental looks by Germans. So yeah, that can also make you feel pretty crappy too.
I also judge people a bit too, though. If they're here for like 3 years, you don't speak any German. I'm like, come on, man, put some effort in.
Right. Or
you know?
at least use it when you're ordering at a restaurant, or like use it when you are interacting with a German, like a little bit.
Yeah, like you're living in a country. It's
right.
You should learn a language.
Just try.
Learn the culture a bit more, you know. I don't know.
How long did it take you guys to learn German, you think? Like more or less to get
I'm
like
still
conversational?
So 14 years?
14 years.
I think conversational was probably about like 4 to 5 years. I had a colleague that, similar like what you said, whose English wasn't that good and my German wasn't good. So I said, you speak English to me, I'll speak German to you. And on those 2 years together, my German went from like okay to like conversational very quickly because I was doing it every day, 8 hours a day.
But you're not practicing listening to German though.
Right, but I practice speaking, and then I hear German all the time anyways, but that super helped me on top of German courses. But I would say like about 5 years, so it got like conversational-ish, but like a good like 8 until I felt like comfortable when I talk on the phone, or I could go to a random place or ask for a reservation at a restaurant, walking by myself without anyone near me, just in case I need help, you know? It's always that like, I need someone near me just for safety. But I think honestly, it was like probably my 8th year where I was kind of like, okay, I can do this now. It's fine.
Yeah.
But even now, there are times where like your brain just doesn't work, and people are speaking to you. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know why. Like I had a big heavy German weekend. I was somewhere speaking German the whole weekend. Now my brain doesn't work anymore. That happens too, weirdly enough. It's like I should know what you're saying. My brain's just not comprehending anything at the moment, and I can't tell you why.
Right. And you probably know this. There's kind of like a brain delay. So if we're walking speaking English, and then somebody comes over and asks us a very basic question in German, I probably won't understand it because my brain, it's looking for English words. And then, so I'll just be like, wie bitte? And then he says it again. And suddenly my brain's had that. And they're like, okay. And now I'm, you know what I mean? And so, and I've seen that happen with tourists a lot as well. They'll go up to Germans and immediately just go like, hi, do you know where the, like speaking English super fast, you know? And the German's like, sorry, I don't speak English, even though they do speak English. But it's like, if you just said, excuse me, give them a moment to, you know, do you speak English? Then it gives their brain the time to like, okay, let me switch to my other brain, you know?
It's a little tip for anyone watching. If you ask for directions, something like that to a native, just give them a second to
be processed.
To code switch,
There's like input delay, basically.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
Yeah. I know what you mean about like wanting to have like the feeling of wanting to have like a native speaker with you just in case.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. Like Colombia is the example where I've had that the most, because like basically it's like 5% of the population speaks English in Colombia. And we lived in like a smaller city that's not touristy, it's not international. And so there was no English, like zero English.
Okay.
And so there was nothing more terrifying than being in like a one-on-one interaction with someone and then I'm not understanding what's going on. Because I'm like, I got no one to help me. Like no one can like figure this out for me, or like being on the phone. The phone was like
phone's the worst. Yeah,
terrifying. I hate that. Yeah.
But you kind of learn how to read body language a bit more, because like someone's talking to you one on one. I have no idea what they're saying, but like they're laughing like, yeah, good now. Yeah. I gotta go. I gotta get out of here as soon as possible. But you gotta learn how to read like a situation, like how they're talking to you. And like, yeah. So some Germans some just like to talk. Like more people like talk a lot. The Germans people like talk a lot. And as they're talking to you, you're kind of like, it's a one kind of side of conversation. So kind of read what they're saying. Just say a few yas, a few genows, a few assos, and then try to get out of there.
Those are the best words to learn, right?
Yeah,
What they're saying.
Genau, asso, and na klar. If you know those, you know German.
Yeah.
Or you can
can just say it to anything. You just say it to anything.
Na klar.
Yeah.
But like I told you, when I knew very little German, I was on a train with this older German, and we were just like in one of those little cabins where you buy it yourselves. I spoke like that amount of German. This was like years ago. And he just started telling his life story for like 2 hours. And I didn't have the heart to say, I didn't, so I was just, yeah. And then, but then finally he obviously asked me a question that was not a yes or no.
The worst
answer, but I gave him a yes or no answer. And then this look of horror on his face where and then he asked again. And then I had a look of horror on my face. And then he just realized that he was speaking to somebody who for 2 hours had no idea what he was talking about. So then I just got up and went to the bathroom, never came back. Like, yeah, it was awful.
I mean, to be fair, there is like a certain amount of like self-reflection that somebody needs. Like if you speak for 2 hours without the other person saying anything, you're not really picking up on a lot of social cues either, right?
Right.
Exactly.
It's not really a conversation at that point.
It's not a conversation.
No.
I remember like after my German course, I stayed with my friend, the one in Gelsenkirchen, and I was with his family, like with his parents, and they don't speak English. And so they were like, his dad was kind of taking us around and showing us some of these like historical coal mines in the area, because it's like a big coaling area. And he was just talking for like 2 hours, 3 hours, just telling me like the history of industrial coal mines in Germany. And I'm just like sitting there like this, all of the words are just like going over my head.
Right.
And he was just going like full speed ahead. And he was like, did you know that in, 1583, then when they invented this new tool for excavating? And I'm like, genau. I was like, I have no idea what you're saying. And so it was like a week of that. And, I felt like after spending time with his dad, I felt like I had read like the dictionary 3 times over. Like my head was just like hurting. I was like, too many words, no, too much coal. No.
That's amazing.
Something that I'm curious about with you guys as well, being in Germany for so long now, is there anything that you miss about your life in the US?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, like family, of course, definitely number one.
But yeah, like we talked about earlier, kind of
seafood,
the social friendliness of Americans. I miss that. Like I think that's the one, like the very first breath of fresh air that the second I land in the U.S. that just hits you. Like I just know I'm home just by how talkative people are and how more relaxed they are in social situations. And I mean, like, just like not your friends, but just like random people you might interact. You know, you're in line at the airport and the guy behind you just like, so where'd you come from? Where you're like, in Germany, they would never bother you asking. So you're like, okay, no, I'm in the US now. And I really like that. And I do miss that. Like, if I could have that in Germany, I would program that in.
I'm so on that. I think I've gotten very eingedeutscht, where I'm very used to like just the way it is here now. When I go to the States, sometimes I get, not all the time, I still miss a little bit of it. Sometimes I do get annoyed. I'm like, why are you talking to me? I don't know you. You don't know me. We're not gonna be hanging out later. This conversation is not worth having.
Oh man, you're treated a
like,
German.
I've got like it's like a little more German now. Not like a mean way, just like this conversation is going nowhere and there's no reason to have it because I got things to do. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, but I do generally, I do get a sentiment. I do kind of miss that. The 5-minute friends you get in the States every once in a while. It's kind of nice. I miss like Rhode Island seafood, of course, my family.
Yeah.
But
Mexican food for me. California, yeah, God.
Sure, that's fair.
Woo.
But besides that, like culturally and like just everyday life, there's not really a lot that I miss. Like I don't miss driving. I don't miss the suburbs. I don't miss the infrastructure in the States at all.
I think that would be the hardest thing for me is not having the public transport.
Yeah,
when we go there.
100%.
Just like getting back into the life of having to drive every day and just everything that comes along with that. You know, it's
I
just
just get very annoyed when I'm in the States. I have to
Yeah.
like if I need one small thing, I have to get in the car. It's about 25 minutes round trip or 30 minutes just to get one small thing. Where here I just walk down the street, get whatever I need, and
or hop in a tram for 2 stops.
or
and
hop
then
in a tram, or like I want to go to a bar, I can walk to the bar, or like whenever I'm in the States, you know, I'm out with some friends, I get nervous about people drinking and driving. We don't have to worry about that here, and there's just so many things that I don't miss at all whenever I go back.
Yeah, living in Berlin, like there's a lot less planning you have to do with your day. You can just
Just
decide
life,
decide to go wherever, and there's going to be a subway that gets you there. And yeah, you can drink as much as you want, or you know, and you could take a nap on the train if you want. You don't have to, you're not like driving tense in traffic, or you know. So I think that would be the hardest part for me going back is just having to drive everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a
And
big
tipping.
one, isn't it?
Yeah,
Tipping.
for sure.
Oh, that
Every
too.
time I go to the States, I always forget. I'm like, how much do I tip again? Because every time I go, it's always more and more.
getting
It used to be
insane, though.
15%, and it was 20. Now it's like,
No.
oh, maybe like 25. I'm like, I'm not spending 30%.
No.
That's a crazy amount of money to give for a service that they're providing, but that's their job. You know, I don't know. I think because we both moved here at young ages, you know, 20 in our early 20s, 22 years old. You were also 21, 22.
Yeah.
Our whole adult lives have been here. So when I do go back to the States, I forget what it's like to actually be there. I was only there like as a child, then in college, then right after college, I dipped out and came to Germany. So like people are like, but you are American. How can you forget? It's like, because it's been a third of my life. You know,
Yeah,
I
it's been a
forget
long
these
time.
things.
It's been a while.
And then I'm like, damn, it's really, really annoying, and I don't like it.
But what is the deal with tipping in Germany? Because when I was there with my friends, like the people I hung out with the most, like as a part of my study abroad program, were Americans. So they were like very much tuned into like tipping culture, and we have that in Canada, but like we just inherited it from you guys. Like it's not our thing. You know, we just copied you. Yeah, thanks. And so they were like really like focused on, okay, how much should we tip and what's the percentage? And we never figured it out after the month that we were there. Like, do you need to tip? Do you not need to tip? If you tip, how much do you tip? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
It's
you
up
should
to
tip.
you.
Like,
I mean, you don't have to.
no,
but
Berlin's at that point. If you don't, you're an asshole.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Oh, don't start this again.
I'm not saying this again. But usually
Alex
you
never
tip,
tips, by the way.
Usually, I do. Usually, you tip. Let's say if the service is really good, 10%. If it's really good service, but normally if it's like
It's a lot of rounding up.
if your bill's $18.50, you give them 20.
Yeah.
If it's 19, you give them 20.
Right. If it's €9, you give them 10. Yeah, you just round up. You just like a few little extra coins kind of here. Nothing major. Yeah.
Exactly.
Which I think is why it's so painful going back to the US, where suddenly it's like I need a second mortgage on my house just for all this tipping, you know, for 2 weeks. Jesus.
Exactly. It's not included in the price. And like if the service is bad, you just don't tip, and no one, you know, that's what it is. Like, sorry, the service wasn't great. I'm not giving you a tip, and no one's gonna, you know, scream at you and call you a terrible person. But usually, 10% at most, and then the rest of the time just round up.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems reasonable. 10%, like that's okay. We did have one kind of weird situation, and ironically, it was in Berlin for that one weekend we were there. It was me and 2 buddies. We went to a restaurant. We had like a meal. They came with the check, and we wanted to pay individually, which also like seemed to be more of a hurdle in Germany. Maybe that was just our experience, but like every time we asked to split the bill, they were like, "Oh my god!" Like they did not want to do that. But we were like going to pay separately, and we were like, "Okay, you know what? We can do one bill." But we'll all just put in our money together. So like, how much was your food? Okay, it was, 10 euros. Great. Yours was 8. Yours was 7. And we were counting up. And they're like, okay, how many? Okay, it was like this amount and this many cents or whatever. And so we had all of our money together. And as we're doing this, the waiter goes, "Oh my god," like that.
Really?
And we were like, oh, like. Because we were counting it down to like the cents, basically, right?
Oh, he was angry that you weren't going to give him a tip. You mean? Or
that's what we understood. That
that could be, yeah.
We were counting it out like individually, and what we were going to do is get our money together. Like, okay, the meal cost 25, and then we could figure out the tip after that. But we wanted to just make sure that everyone had paid their share of the meal, right? So that was step number 1, and then step number 2 was going to be figuring out the percentage of the tip. But we didn't even get that far, and this guy was like, "Oh my god." And he like gave us so much attitude about it. And so then we were like, oh, maybe we are doing something wrong, like where we're supposed to be like focusing more on the tip than we are. But I don't know.
The problem is though now is Germany or Berlin, well, Germany actually is historically been a very cash friendly country. But since COVID, there's more card machines. It's easier to pay with card now, which is nice and easy. But with that, everyone's getting these American card machines and they automatically have this 10, 15, 20% tip thing on it.
Right.
So now tipping culture is
changing,
becoming a thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of Germans and Berliners are like, don't tip the way you do in America. Like, don't bring this culture over here. Like, the wait staff gets paid a wage, plus they get, their tips anyways. So don't bring this bullshit 20%, 25% culture here.
Yeah.
And people are actually actively like fighting it and like getting mad about it. And people are like not tipping out of spite. If they have those machines, I've heard people doing that. Like, I'm not going to tip at all now because the machine's forcing me to give you a tip.
Yeah, but
so that's been kind of frustrating, to be honest. And we're trying to keep that American culture thing out of here because it's not part of German culture.
Yeah.
And like I wanted to add as well, like if you're at a bar or something like that, and there's no table service, you don't need a tip because you're at the bar, you're getting your own thing. So there's no service being provided except for them pouring you a beer or giving you a cupcake or whatever it might be.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, definitely I have noticed since I moved here till now, when I first moved here, I would say tipping wasn't really expected, but I'd say now tipping is expected. It's just a less, but like the tipping culture is here. And I think it's just going to get worse over time. And eventually it'll be just like what it is in the States. So,
I really hope not. That's crazy.
So it's your guys' fault. In the last 13 years or 14 years, you've brought it over with you.
Yeah. Damn it. That's America's greatest export, right? Just ruining things.
Tipping, like, yeah. Well, I think a lot of it is kind of tourists, right? Because like
it's tourists. It's also
because
happens,
which is them being nice. Like they don't know, like, and so and they feel weird giving a nothing tip, and so they just want it. And then of course, if you're like a service worker in Germany and you get used to these amazing tips, and suddenly somebody's giving you like 50-cent tip, like why would you want to go backwards? So fair,
What would you say like the biggest differences are between the US and Germany in terms of the culture? Like you mentioned that people are like a little bit more kind of standoffish when it comes to customer service or like talking to strangers. Would you say that's the biggest thing, or is there something else that's like, bigger than that?
It's one of them. It's also the rule following. I feel like things are much more flexible in the US. Like here, they're very much about you got to do things. I mean, I'll tell you. I think this is like the perfect example. Like I once, like I was just jumping in a McDonald's to grab something and jump back out. So I was like 2 minutes. And so, and the nearest pole, I just saw it, locked my bike to it, and a homeless man sleeping on the side of the street, a German homeless man, pointed to the sign and told me, "You can't lock your bike to that pole." And it's like, that is the perfect example of like, come on, like, you know what I mean? It's a free poll. I'm back into it, but yeah, I think like sometimes the rule following kind of sucks the fun out of certain things.
I like the rules, man. We live in a society. You don't ride your bike on a sidewalk. Use the bike lane. That's what it's for.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying about following. I'm just saying like Germans take it to an extreme, a point where it's like there's some flexibility in everything, and this is the classic one that we've talked about a million times, but Germans do this thing where they just refuse to walk across the street if it's not green, even if it's 3 a.m. in the morning and you can look both directions for 10 miles and see there's no cars coming, they will stand there and they'll give you mean looks if you cross. See, that's what I mean by you got to have some flexibility, because there's always, there's certain times where you got to just let it go, and they just don't. Fair. And it kind of bothers me.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like to a certain point, it becomes arbitrary, right?
Right.
Like it's just rule following just for the sake of rule following, not for safety, just for rules.
Yeah. And I think that's it. They enjoy the rule enforcement. They don't care about the rule. Like, so you see some stuff like that where it's like, if I'm standing too close to the edge of the bond, there'll be an old woman like, get away from there. You're supposed to be at least 1 meter away from the edge. And it's like, you know what? If I'm gonna fall, let me fall. Like, leave me alone. Like, I know how to stand. Like, I have balance. Like, it's like that kind
but
of
again,
thing.
That's less in Berlin though. It's more in other areas in Germany. It's like
right.
Berlin's pretty. I mean, it's still Germany,
right.
but it's way more lax than I think other places. Of course, for anyone watching as well, like we speak of these things, like obviously no country is a monolith. No Germans are all the same. Everyone's different, but generally they do like the rules.
They do like the rules.
I'm into the rules now too. I think rules are nice.
You're German now.
Hey man, we live in a society. We all got to work together to make sure that we uphold the society. And if you take out a little brick that's going to crumble down.
I agree, but when you're taking like pleasure out of just enforcing an arbitrary rule that doesn't affect you
fair.
at all,
fair.
then come on.
Well, and it's hard when you come from a different country too, and you don't know the rules. Like I got so many like death stares from people for like riding my bike on one lane when I should have been in another one. Or I put my feet up on a train, like on the seat across from me on the train. God forbid. And
no, don't do that.
The attendant there like lost her mind on me. It was like yelling at me and stuff. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know. So yeah, a little bit of patience would be nice. But yeah, I get it. They have a system and they want it to run, a well-oiled machine that they want to keep running. I get it.
Well, they say that.
Right.
Hey, I was trying to be positive, Alex. I was really trying.
Lately, it's getting less and less. But
like I think that's the biggest like German exported lie is the efficiency of Germans, because
it used to be that way. It's just not so much
the
anymore.
trains are not on time. The bureaucracy is stuck in the 80s.
Slow. Like I think they just finally got rid of fax machines at like the immigration office and stuff like the past 2 years. Like
they sent me an email the other day for like the first. I was super excited.
Yeah, like basically. Because Germany is this, I mean, it's the biggest economy in Europe. It's supposed to be like this powerhouse. And in terms of technology, honestly, they're finally at a point where like Canada and the US were 20 years ago. You know what I mean? Like they're actually oddly behind in terms of technology, and we're doing a lot of things still paper and stuff. And they're just now the past 3 or 4 years, but mostly because
trying to update,
because of COVID, not because they were wanted to, just because they were like, okay, safety, whatever.
And Germans like the traditions, I think. I think change is, I mean,
it's hard.
You think
change
of the history, I think, of the country as well. And I think change can be scary. If something works one way, let's just keep it that way for now, because this country's been through a lot of different changes. So I don't know. I think there might be something in the back of the psyche of like, let's just chill on that, because it works. It might not be efficient, but it works.
But it's not efficient.
But it's not. But it used to be when it was like, 30 million less people here, maybe.
Right. Yeah, but when it takes 3 months to like send an application, get a response, also, like, is that efficient?
Right. Perfect example. When I went to the States in August, my wallet got stolen in the airport in a security line.
In Berlin, right?
In Berlin.
Yeah.
Cops are useless. Security is useless. I don't understand how something gets stolen in a security line, but it did. But my visa, like my Aufenthaltstitel, my visa to stay in the country was in my wallet. So I emailed them that day to get my new visa, and I just got my new card yesterday, 6 months later.
Yeah.
And I had to go twice to the immigration office, once to give my police report and tell them what happened, and yesterday just to pick it up. They couldn't mail it to me. I had to go physically there to pick it up.
So there's a German efficiency right there.
Yeah. 6 months for a piece of plastic.
No.
Like when I was in Germany, it did give me the vibe that like I was going back in time to a certain degree. Like like paying with cash was a big thing. Like you guys have said that's kind of changed in more recent times.
Changing,
But that was weird for me. Like in Canada, like you don't pay with cash. Like it's all card.
Yeah.
And we pay with like everyone's got tap as well, which I think we have more tap than in the States as well, because when I go there, I also find that there isn't a lot of tap. But maybe it's just the place that I'm going to, like where they have to, like in the US, they have to take your card sometimes to the back where the machine is. Like we don't have that in Canada. That's like that gives us anxiety. It's like, where are you going with my
card.
with my MasterCard? But here we just like tap everything. And so then going to Germany, where it's like, it's not my first language, and now we got to like be making change, and I gotta decipher, okay, this costs this much money, and I want to give maybe a certain percentage of tip. So now I have to do the mental calculation of how much I should ask for back to give a 10%. It's like, oh my God, this is too hard. Like, can we just have a machine? I can just put in 5% or 10%, tap it, and then I can go home. Like, it would be so much easier.
Luckily, because they're a little late to the game, now all the card machines are taps. Like, I use my phone. I don't use my card at all anymore. I just, always just Apple Pay, beep, 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 beep for everything.
Yeah.
So that's been nice. That's been nice.
Yeah, it's slowly getting there. But yeah, even a few years ago, I remember me and my wife, like, we were on vacation, like, in northern Germany, and like, we usually don't, but we were like, oh, for once, let's go to like a fancy restaurant. So we went to the place, and had a nice little romantic dinner. And so it's like, it's a place where like your average customer is spending like, 40, 50 euro per person probably, right? But the bill comes and I give him my card, and he's like, oh no, cash only. And I'm like, you expect people to carry around this much cash? And it was like dead of winter, and I had to walk around for 20 minutes, like in 0-degree temperatures, looking for an ATM. It's like it was pretty insane. And I think I can only speak for Berlin, because maybe this progression to card is I don't know. What are you looking at?
So someone's looking at a fire outside.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, that might be my neighbor.
Can you do that?
No.
Oh, hey, that's illegal.
He doesn't.
Hey, follow the rules, Germans. Follow the rules.
This is Berlin. This is Berlin. This makes a lot of sense.
I think it's a barbecue though.
Alert the authorities. I don't know if he has the right permit for that.
I don't think he does.
Again, like, I have like I had a Thai barbecue about this big, right? And me and my wife were like, yeah, let's, like, in summer, like, it's beautiful weather, let's just cook something in the backyard. That lasted like all of a week, until one of our neighbors came and was like, no, you can't do that anymore. It was like, yeah. And the rule is, in Germany, you can barbecue not in your apartment, but like on your balcony or whatever, until a neighbor complains, and then it's shut down.
Or only if you're on a top floor, because of smoking, because there's no AC, so people have the windows open and people's getting smoke in their apartments. So I understand that rule. It makes sense.
But then I went and I got an electric grill, and I was like, try to shut this down.
Electric grill, you're good.
Yeah, I was like, shut this down, baby. Yeah.
There you go. Loophole.
Yeah. But not as cool as a fire grill.
Yeah. But it is a lot of buzz killing, I think, in Germany, where like having fun with your barbecue, and it's like, oh, there goes that. Okay.
But then at the same time, unlike in the States, or I think also in Canada too, you can have a beer in public and no one's gonna get mad at you. You can go to the park and drink some beers or walking down the street, which is like, I don't understand why that's not legal everywhere. You're not hurting anyone. You're just having a little beer because it's delicious and it's hot outside and it tastes good.
Yeah, that's something that we're missing here. I think we definitely need that.
Yeah, it's nice. And then also people aren't like, going to a bar to drink as much as they can and then get smashed and then go outside. We're like, here, go to a bar, have one or two, maybe go outside, and another one on the walk, and then you're at the park now, and it's just, I don't know, it's definitely a feeling of freedom, which I think is the ultimate reason why I love the city, is that feeling of freedom. Yeah.
It hurts going back to the U.S. when we're walking, and then my wife's like, yeah, let's grab a beer for the walk.
I can't.
And then I'm like, oh, damn it.
And I know, like, it's funny because we talk about all these rules, but at the end of the day, why I love living here is I think the rules make sense.
Alex is alcoholic, so he really likes the beer.
Because I think there are a lot of rules, but the rules are for things that like there should be rules for.
Well,
and for
half the time maybe.
I think for the most part.
Yeah.
And then for the things that shouldn't have a rule, like why can't I have a beer on the street? There's no rule for that, which makes sense in my opinion.
Yeah, it is kind of an interesting combination where it's like there's lots of rules, and then at the same time in some ways there are less rules depending on what the thing is. Right. Like alcohol, okay, less rules. Barbecues, we got to crack down.
Smoking cigarettes inside, okay.
Depending on the place.
Which shouldn't be.
Which probably shouldn't be, but it is here.
Yeah, that one does harm other people. The beer, walking with a beer on the street is fine, but smoking inside, I mean, that does hurt other people.
Yeah. But it's usually small. It's only like small bars you can do it in. And I guess so is like, it's your choice to go to that bar or not to.
Like every bar in Berlin I go to is a smoking bar.
Let's just go to smoking bars. It's all the cool bars,
Yeah, fair enough. Hey, this has been really fun, guys. Thank you. I appreciate this.
Hey, thanks a lot. This is a good time.
Thanks for having us. This was great.
Yeah, it was really fun chatting with you guys and learning a little bit more about Germany. Tell people how they can find you online, how they can watch your content.
Sure. We are AGDW channel. So if you go to YouTube, we're just at AGDW channel. And if you want to go to our Instagram, Alex, he used to have that memorized.
I forgot what it is.
Oh, man. You used to say that every Wednesday.
It says AGDW, and then there's a line, and then it says expats in Germany. Is that what it is?
There you go.
I thought it was AG or Americans dot drinking whatever. Like, come on, man.
We
If you look up AGDW, it's got to be there.
I just see it at the top right there.
Oh, yeah, Americans.in.germany.channel. That's our Instagram.
Okay.
But
we
yeah,
got
YouTube
it.
is at AGW channel.
Amazing. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate this.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Thanks so much.